My name is Jack Turner, and about 3 years ago I bought a ranch on the edge of a small community called Redstone Valley. After years of running businesses in crowded cities, I wanted space. Real space. Land where I could ride, work, and breathe without hearing traffic every 5 minutes. The ranch sat right at the border of a newer housing development. The neighborhood had nice houses, clean streets, and perfectly trimmed lawns. From a distance it looked peaceful. But like many modern communities, it had something that quietly controlled everything: an HOA. At first I didn't think much about it because my ranch wasn't actually inside the neighborhood. My land had been there decades before the development was built. The housing community was constructed next to it later. My property lines were very clear, or at least I thought they were. For the first few months nothing unusual happened. I repaired fences, cleaned out an old barn, and brought a few cattle onto the property. Most days I spent riding across the land or working on improvements. Some neighbors would wave when they drove by. A few even stopped to ask questions about the ranch, but eventually someone from the HOA noticed me, and that someone was Karen Whitfield. Karen was the HOA president of Redstone Valley. She had a reputation in the neighborhood for being extremely strict about rules. People said she monitored everything from mailbox colors to lawn height. One afternoon I was fixing a gate near the road when a black SUV pulled up beside the fence. Karen stepped out holding a clipboard. She looked across the ranch like she was inspecting something that belonged to her. "You're the new owner?" she asked. I nodded. "Jack Turner." She didn't introduce herself right away. Instead, she started talking about HOA regulations. According to her, the neighborhood had strict property appearance rules. No livestock near residential zones. No agricultural equipment visible from the street. And no fencing that didn't match HOA standards. I listened for a minute before stopping her. "This isn't part of the neighborhood," I said. Karen frowned. "Yes, it is," she replied. I pointed toward the houses across the road. "That development is next to my land," I explained. "Not the other way around." Karen didn't seem convinced. She wrote something on her clipboard and told me I would be receiving a notice about violations. Then she drove away. 2 days later, a letter appeared in my mailbox. It was an official HOA warning claiming my ranch property violated multiple community rules. It demanded that I remove livestock from view and replace my fencing with HOA-approved materials. I read the letter twice and laughed. They were trying to apply suburban neighborhood rules to a working ranch that had existed long before their development. I ignored it. A week passed quietly. Then one afternoon, while I was repairing a tractor in the barn, I noticed a police car driving slowly up the ranch road that was unexpected. The officer parked near the gate and stepped out. He introduced himself and explained that the HOA had reported a property dispute. According to the complaint, I was occupying land that belonged to the Redstone Valley community. I almost thought he was joking, but Karen's name was right there on the report. She had actually told the police that my ranch property belonged to the HOA. I walked the officer over to the fence and showed him the boundary markers. The original survey stakes were still in place from years earlier. Then I pulled out the property documents I kept in the house. The paperwork clearly showed that the ranch land had been privately owned for decades. The officer nodded after reviewing everything. "Looks like you're well within your property," he said. He left shortly after, but the situation with the HOA wasn't finished yet. A few days later I received another letter demanding that I attend the next HOA meeting to discuss land ownership clarification. At first I considered ignoring it again, but then I had a better idea. I showed up to the meeting. The community clubhouse was full of residents when I arrived. Karen sat at the front table with several other board members. She looked very confident when she saw me walk in. Karen started explaining that the HOA believed the ranch property fell under community jurisdiction. Then she asked if I had anything to say. I stood up and placed a large folder on the table. Inside were copies of property surveys, county land records, and development plans from when Redstone Valley was first built. One of the documents showed something interesting. When the housing development was constructed, the builder had created an access road that slightly crossed onto my ranch property. It had been done years earlier without anyone noticing. Technically, that meant the neighborhood had been using a small section of my land for their road. The room went completely silent when the board members saw the map. Karen looked confused. "What does that mean?" she asked. I explained it calmly. If I wanted to enforce the property boundary strictly, the HOA would need to relocate part of their access road. That road connected several homes to the main street. In other words, the HOA depended on land that legally belonged to my ranch. The board members started whispering among themselves. Karen's confident expression disappeared. After a short discussion, the board asked if there was any way to resolve the situation peacefully. I told them there was. Instead of fighting over land that had been used for years, we could simply work out a formal easement agreement. But there was one condition. I would be joining the HOA board to make sure property disputes like this never happened again. Within a week, the paperwork was signed. The HOA officially recognized my ranch property boundaries. The road access was granted through a legal easement, and I became a member of the HOA board. Karen was not happy about the outcome, but most of the residents were relieved the situation had been resolved without lawsuits or major construction. These days, Redstone Valley is still a quiet place. The ranch is still there. The cattle still graze peacefully along the fence line. And the HOA meetings are a little different now, because the person they once accused of occupying their land now helps run the board that manages the neighborhood next to it. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem with authority is to become part of it.